The statue of Louis XIV at the Palace of Versailles, it is an iconic representation of the Sun King, standing prominently at the Place d'Armes, the grand entrance courtyard of the palace. It is one of the first sights that visitors encounter upon approaching the palace and symbolizes the immense power and legacy of Louis XIV.
Welcome to the Palace of Versailles, a symbol of royal grandeur and one of the most breathtaking landmarks in the world. Once home to French kings, this architectural masterpiece holds centuries of history, art, and power within its golden halls. From the lavish rooms of Louis XIV to the stunning gardens that stretch for miles, we'll take you on an exclusive journey through the secrets and splendor of Versailles. Get ready to step into the world of French royalty and remarkable beauty.
Since 1979, the Palace of Versailles has been listed as a World Heritage and is one of the greatest achievements in French 17th century art. Louis XIV's old hunting pavilion was transformed and extended by his son, Louis XIV, when he installed the court and government there in 1682. A succession of kings continued to embellish the palace up until the French Revolution.
Today, the palace contains 2,300 rooms, spread over 63,150 square meters. In 1789, the French Revolution forced Louis XVI to leave Versailles for Paris. The palace would never again be a royal residence.
This way too, the state apartments and the Hall of Mirrors.
The Palace of Versailles is about 18 kilometers west of Paris.
The palace is owned by the government of France, and since 1995, it has been managed under the direction of the French Ministry of Culture by the public establishment of the Palace, Museum and National Estate of Versailles. About 15 million people visit the palace, park, or gardens of Versailles every year, making it one of the most popular tourist attractions in the world.
As Louis XIV moved the seat of his court and government to Versailles in 1682, the palace became the de facto capital of France.
The Horses of the Sun, by French sculptor Jules Guérin. It was commissioned by Louis XIV for the gardens of Versailles. They are a pair of sculptural groups created in the 17th century.
This is the Royal Chapel of Versailles. It is located at the southern end of the north wing. The building stands 40 meters high and measures 42 meters long and 24 meters wide. The chapel is rectangular with a semicircular apse, combining traditional Gothic Royal French church architecture with the French Baroque style of Versailles.
Now, we are in the Arched Hall.
The Arched Hall is one of the many wonderful halls at the main Palace of Versailles, with a beautiful arched ceiling and a row of fine statues on each side, plus a fantastic black and white floor.
Louis XIV rooms.
This sculpture is the Parnasse Français by Louis Garnier in 1721. It is made of bronze, and its height is over 2 meters, commissioned by Everard Titan, and celebrating artists, musicians, and writers of the reign of Louis XIV. A total of 11 people are represented on the sculpture.
Louis XIV of France in coronation robes, painting by artist Henri Testelin in 1673.
Louis XIV, on horseback, entering Paris in 1653.
The palace has over 6,000 paintings, 1,500 drawings, 2,100 sculptures, 2,150 windows, 5,000 pieces of furniture, 1,250 chimneys, 67 staircases, 200,000 trees, 1,400 fountains and waterfalls, 300 statues, vases and busts decorate the pads. The Palaces of Versailles employs over 600 people.
The Salon of Hercules. This was originally a chapel. It was rebuilt beginning in 1712, under the supervision of the first architect to the king, Robert de Cot, to showcase the paintings by Paolo Veronese, which was a gift to Louis XIV from the Republic of Venice in 1664. The painting on the ceiling, The Apotheosis of Hercules, by François Lemoyne, was completed in 1736 and gave the room its name.
The Salon of Abundance. It was the antechamber to the Cabinet of Curios, which displayed Louis XIV collection of precious jewels and rare objects. Some of the objects in the collection are depicted in René-Antoine Houas's painting Abundance and Liberality, located on the ceiling over the door opposite the windows.
The Salon of Venus. This salon was used for serving light meals during evening receptions. The principal feature in this room is Jean Waren's life-size statue of Louis XIV in the costume of a Roman emperor. On the ceiling, in a gilded oval frame, is another painting by Houas, Venus subjugating the gods and powers. Trompe-l'oeil paintings and sculpture around the ceiling illustrate mythological themes.
The Salon of Diana. It was used by Louis XIV as a billiards room. The celebrated bust of Louis XIV by Bernini, when the famous sculptor's visit to France in 1665.
The Salon of Mars. It was used by the royal guards until 1782 and was decorated on a military theme with helmets and trophies. It was turned into a concert room between 1684 and 1750, with galleries for musicians on either side. Portraits of Louis XV and his queen, Marie Leschetizka, by the Flemish artist Karel van Loo decorate the room today.
The Salon of Mercury. It was the original state bedchamber when Louis XIV officially moved the court and government to the palace in 1682. The bed is a replica of the original commissioned by King Louis Philippe in the 19th century when he turned the palace into a museum. The ceiling paintings by the Flemish artist Jean-Baptiste de Champagne depict the god Mercury in his chariot, drawn by a rooster, and Alexander the Great and Ptolemy surrounded by scholars and philosophers. The automaton clock was made for the king by the royal clockmaker Antoine Morand in 1706. When it chimes the hour, figures of Louis XIV and fame descend from a cloud.
The Salon of Apollo. It was the royal throne room under Louis XIV and was the setting for formal audiences. The 8-foot-high silver throne was melted down in 1689 to help pay the cost of an expensive war and was replaced by a more modest throne of gilded wood. The central painting on the ceiling, by Charles de la Fosse, depicts the sun chariot of Apollo, the king's favorite emblem, pulled by 4 horses and surrounded by the 4 seasons.
This is the Salon of War.
This is the Hall of Mirrors.
The Hall of Mirrors is a long gallery at the westernmost part of the palace that looks out onto the gardens. The hall was built from 1678 to 1681 on the site of a terrace Lavaux built between the king and queen suites. The hall is clad in marble and decorated in a modified version of the Corinthian order, with 578 mirrors facing 17 windows and reflecting the light provided by them.
The ceiling fresco, painted by Lebrun over the next 4 years, embellishes the first 18 years of Louis XIV reign in 30 scenes, 17 of which are military victories over the Dutch. The fresco depicts Louis XIV himself alongside classical figures in the scene celebrating moments in his reign, such as the beginning of personal rule in 1661, breaking from earlier frescoes at Versailles that used allegories derived from classical and mythological scenes.
The Hall of Mirrors measures 73 meters long, 10.5 meters wide, and 12.3 meters high, making it one of the most impressive rooms in the palace.
The Hall of Mirrors is illuminated by natural light during the day, but in the past, it was often lit by thousands of candles reflected in the mirrors, creating a dazzling effect during evening events.
On one side of the hall are 17 large arched windows that offer a sweeping view of the gardens. On the opposite side, there are 17 mirrors designed to reflect the light and scenery from the gardens into the room, creating a sense of endless space and light.
Some famous events in the Hall of Mirrors includes Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette's wedding celebration in 1770, the Treaty of Versailles, signing in 1919, ending World War I, court receptions and extravagant balls held by Louis XIV, where he would showcase his wealth and influence.
This is the Salon of Peace.
The private apartments of the Queen. It is a suite of rooms that were reserved for the personal use of the Queen, originally arranged for the use of the Maria Theresa of Spain, consort of Louis XIV. The rooms were later modified for use by Marie Leschiscot and finally for Marie Antoinette. The Queen's apartments and the King's apartments were laid out on the same design, each suite having 7 rooms. Both suites had ceilings painted with scenes from mythology. The King's ceilings featured male figures, the Queen's ceilings featured female figures. Here is the Queen's bedchamber, one of the most important rooms in Versailles. This is where royal births took place in public. Marie Antoinette made significant changes to the decor here to reflect her tastes.
The Queen's antechamber, a formal room used for receiving guests and occasionally for dining.
The coronation room.
The coronation room at the Palace of Versailles, officially known as the Coronation Room of Napoleon, is dedicated to celebrating Napoleon Bonaparte's coronation as Emperor of the French. Located in the northern wing of Versailles, the room is not part of the original design by Louis XIV, but was later transformed by Louis Philippe in the 19th century as part of his conversion of Versailles into a museum of French history.
The room's centerpiece is the massive painting of the Coronation of Napoleon by Jacques-Louis David, completed in 1807. Measuring 10 meters wide and 6 meters tall, it depicts Napoleon crowning himself as emperor in Notre Dame Cathedral on the 2nd of December 1804.
The coronation room was originally part of the Queen's Guard room.
Napoleon I, Emperor of the French, 1804, King of Italy, 1805.
Portrait of Napoleon in coronation robes, 1811, by the artist Robert Lefebvre.
Now we are in the Museum of the History of France.
The Museum of the History of France at the Palace of Versailles was established in 1837 by King Louis Philippe I, who repurposed much of the palace to honor and showcase French history from the Middle Ages to the 19th century.
Named the Museum of All the Glories of France, it transformed Versailles from a symbol of absolute monarchy into a national monument dedicated to celebrating the achievements, events, and figures that shaped France, spanning from royalty to revolutionary leaders, emperors, and military heroes.
This grand gallery is the heart of the museum and measures 120 meters in length. It features more than 30 large paintings of France's most significant military victories and battles, from Clovis to the Napoleonic Wars. The gallery includes busts of notable generals and leaders, capturing the grandeur and heroism associated with France's military history.
The museum commissioned and displayed artworks by prominent artists of the time, including Horace Vernet and Eugène Delacroix.
Key artworks include The Coronation of Napoleon by Jacques-Louis David, The Battle of Austerlitz, and The Siege of La Rochelle.
In addition to paintings, the museum is filled with sculptures of notable figures like Joan of Arc, Charlemagne, Henry IV, and Napoleon.
The museum represents one of the earliest efforts to establish a national historical museum that would educate and inspire the public. Louis Philippe opened Versailles to the public, making the museum a landmark of cultural education and national pride.
To accommodate the museum, several former royal apartments and spaces were reconfigured and restored, with efforts to respect the original architecture while adapting the interiors for new displays. This includes additions of lighting, paneling, and mounting systems for large-scale paintings.
Today, the museum allows visitors to journey through French history, beginning with early medieval France, through the height of the Bourbon monarchy, the French Revolution, and the First Empire under Napoleon, ending with the 19th century. The museum still serves as a historical and cultural institution that enriches visitors' understanding of France's past, its leaders, and its defining events.
Enjoy this hallway with busts and statues at the Palace of Versailles.
Gardens entrance.
The Gardens of Versailles are a stunning masterpiece of landscape architecture and one of the most significant examples of formal French garden design. Spanning over 800 hectares, the gardens were designed by André Leneter for Louis XIV in the late 17th century and served as an integral part of the king's vision of Versailles as a symbol of royal power and absolute monarchy.
The view of the Orangery.
The Orangery is a vast gallery where exotic plants, particularly orange trees, were kept during the winter months.
The Orangery was not only a symbol of luxury, but also a demonstration of the king's control over nature, as delicate plants from around the world thrived in this carefully controlled environment.
This is the Lake of the Swiss Guards.
The Queen's Grove.
The Queen's Grove is an elegant and serene section of the Versailles Gardens, designed as a private retreat for the Queen, away from the bustling court life.
It is a combination of formality and natural beauty, representing the duality of royal life.
The Bacchus Fountain.
The Royal Alley.
View of the Grand Canal from the palace.
This fountain is
Latona's Pool and Parterre.
the Grand Canal.
The Grand Canal at the Palace of Versailles is a massive, cross-shaped body of water that stretches across the gardens, enhancing the grandeur and scale of the estate.
View of the palace from the Grand Canal.
The fountain's design is based on the myth of Latona, the mother of the twin gods, Apollo and Diana. According to the myth, Latona and her children were tormented by the peasants of Lycia, who mocked and harassed them as they sought refuge. In retaliation, Latona asked Zeus to turn the peasants into frogs.
Alley of Floor.
Sculpture of Perseus and Andromeda in 1684 by Pierre Puget.
Louis XIV used the colonnade grove for outdoor concerts.
This statue's is The Abduction of Proserpine by Pluto.
The abduction of Proserpina by Pluto is a myth from Greek mythology that tells of the kidnapping of Proserpine by the god of the underworld Pluto.
The myth, Proserpine, the daughter of Ceres, the goddess of agriculture, is picking flowers when Pluto abducts her. Pluto carries her away in a chariot drawn by black horses. Ceres, in grief, causes a drought, and Jupiter intervenes to negotiate a deal. Pluto and Ceres will each have Proserpina for half the year. This explains the changing of the seasons, with winter when Proserpina is with Pluto and spring when she is with Ceres.
The statues of the water parter.
The sleeping Ariadne, long called Cleopatra.
The Cleopatra became the main model, through which a conventional pose signifying sleep.
The reclining figure in a chiton, bound under her breasts, half lies, half sits, her extended legs crossed at the calves, her head pillowed on her left arm, her right thrown over her head. Sphinx ridden by a Cupid.
A white marble sphinx on which is a bronze child, representing love, who plays on his rump, holding a crown of flowers.
And that concludes our journey through the breathtaking Palace of Versailles. We hope you enjoyed exploring this royal masterpiece with us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next adventure.